In the deepest shadows of Norse mythology, where fate and choice intertwine, there exists a binding that should never have held, a ribbon softer than silk, lighter than air, yet stronger than any chain forged by mortal hands. Trapped within its impossible grip, jaws forced open by a sword, a wolf howls through eternity. This is Fenrir, the monstrous wolf whose very existence posed a question the gods could never answer. Can you chain destiny itself? The story of Fenrir begins not with the wolf, but with the fear of what he might become. It's a tale that challenges us to consider whether our attempts to control fate only ensure its arrival. Because in trying to prevent the prophecy, the gods of Asgard would guarantee it. They would transform a creature into the very monster they feared. And at the end of all things, when the sky splits and the world burns, Fenrir would have his revenge. Far to the east of Midgard lies Jotunheim, the realm of giants where the laws of Asgard hold no sway. In the dark forest known as Ironwood dwelt Angrboda, she who brings grief. Even among the Jotnar, she was feared, for she possessed knowledge of cedar magic and could glimpse the threads of fate. It was to Ironwood that Loki came, the trickster god whose nature defied simple understanding. Whether seeking refuge or drawn by Angrboda's power, their union would produce 3 offspring that would shake the foundations of the cosmos. First came Jormungandr, born as a serpent whose capacity for growth would know no limits. Second was Hel, a daughter whose body was half living flesh, half corpse, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. And third, youngest of the monstrous siblings, came Fenrir. He was born not as the massive beast of legend, but as a wolf cub, with eyes that gleamed with an intelligence that was decidedly not animal. For a time, Angrboda raised her children in the isolation of Ironwood. She knew what was coming. The Norns, those ancient beings who weave the fates of gods and men alike, had spoken. Her children would play central roles in Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Jormungandr would kill Thor. Hel would refuse to release Baldur from the dead. And Fenrir? Fenrir would devour Odin himself, the All-Father, the greatest of all the Aesir. When the gods discovered the existence of Loki's monstrous children, they consulted the prophecies and were filled with dread. Odin, who had sacrificed his eye for wisdom, knew exactly what these 3 beings represented. The seers had been clear. From these children of Loki and Angrboda, great destruction would come. Their very existence threatened the golden age of the gods. In a midnight raid that Loki himself could not prevent, a party of Aesir traveled to Jotunheim and seized the 3 children from their mother's hall. One can only imagine Angrboda's rage, her grief as they tore her offspring from her arms. But against the might of the gods, even a powerful giantess could do nothing. The children were taken to Asgard to face judgment. Odin dealt with each child according to what he believed would neutralize the threat they posed. Jormungandr, already growing at an alarming rate, was hurled into the ocean surrounding Midgard, where he would sink to the bottom and, hopefully, be forgotten. He wasn't. The serpent grew and grew, feeding on whatever swam too close, until he encircled the entire world and could bite his own tail. Hel was cast into the underworld realm that would bear her name, given dominion over those who died of sickness or old age. She would rule over the inglorious dead, far from the halls of Asgard. But Fenrir, the wolf cub, presented a different problem. He was still young, still small enough to perhaps be controlled. And so Odin made a decision that would haunt him forever. He decided to keep Fenrir in Asgard, under watchful eyes, to see if the beast might be tamed. Of all the gods of Asgard, only one dared to approach the young Fenrir without fear. Tyr, god of war and law, god of oaths and single combat, saw something in the wolf that others missed. Perhaps he recognized the loneliness of a creature torn from its mother, kept as a prisoner among those who feared him. Or perhaps Tyr, whose courage was unmatched even among the battle-hardened Aesir, simply refused to let fear dictate his actions. Each day, Tyr brought Fenrir food. He would sit with the wolf, speak to him, even play with him. In those early days, the other gods watched from a distance, nervously noting how quickly Fenrir was growing. With each passing week, the wolf grew larger, stronger, his jaws more powerful. But Tyr insisted that treating Fenrir as a monster would only ensure he became one. There's a profound tragedy in this relationship. because the bond between Tyr and Fenrir was real. The wolf trusted the god completely. In Tyr, Fenrir found the only being in Asgard who looked at him and saw not a prophecy or a threat, but simply a living creature deserving of compassion. Tyr was more than Fenrir's keeper. He was the closest thing the wolf had to family in this strange realm, where everyone else saw him as an abomination. But even Tyr could not deny what was becoming obvious. Fenrir was growing not just in size, but in power. His strength became prodigious. When he stretched, the ground trembled. When he yawned, his jaws could have swallowed a horse whole. The other gods began to press Odin. Something had to be done. The prophecy loomed over them all. Fenrir would kill Odin. Fenrir would bring Ragnarok. As long as he lived free, that future drew closer. The gods held council after council, debating what should be done. Some argued for killing Fenrir outright, but Odin refused. The gods respected their sacred places too much to defile Asgard with such an act. And besides, murdering Fenrir might itself trigger the very fate they sought to avoid. No, they needed another solution. They needed to bind him, to restrain him, until the day of Ragnarok was so distant that perhaps it might never come at all. But how do you bind a creature destined to break all bonds? How do you imprison fate itself? The gods decided to test Fenrir's strength, under the guise of games and challenges, to see if conventional chains might hold him. They forged Leyding first, a massive chain of iron links, each as thick as a man's thigh. When they brought it to Fenrir, they presented it as a test, a game. "We wish to measure your strength," they told him. "Let us bind you with this chain and see if you can break free." Fenrir examined the chain with those unsettlingly intelligent eyes. Even then, he must have sensed something false in their cheerfulness, something desperate in their smiles. But he was young still, and perhaps part of him wanted to prove himself, to show these gods who feared him that he was strong. He allowed them to wrap Leyding around him, the iron links rattling as they secured it. The gods stepped back. Fenrir flexed, the chain groaned. He strained harder, muscles bunching beneath his fur, and Leyding shattered like glass. Pieces of iron flew across the field where they'd conducted this test, and the gods' faces paled. The wolf was even stronger than they'd feared, but they couldn't give up. They returned to their forges and created Dromi, a chain twice as strong as Leyding. This time, when they brought it to Fenrir, there was less pretense of games. The wolf's eyes narrowed as he looked at the heavier chain. He could sense their growing desperation, smell their fear. But Tyr was there, encouraging him, and Fenrir trusted Tyr. Once again, Fenrir allowed himself to be bound. Once again, he waited until they'd secured the chain. And once again, with a surge of terrible strength, he snapped Dromi as easily as he had Leyding. The gods now knew the truth. No chain they could forge would hold Fenrir. Conventional means had failed. It was then that they turned to magic, to trickery, to the very deception that would transform their relationship with Fenrir, from wary coexistence to eternal enmity. If strength couldn't bind the wolf, perhaps impossibility could. Odin sent his messenger Skirnir on a desperate journey to Svartalfheim, the realm of the dwarves. These master craftsmen, working in caverns beneath the world, possessed skills that put even the gods to shame. They had forged Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. They had crafted Skidbladnir, the ship that could fold up and fit in a pocket. If anyone could create a binding strong enough to hold Fenrir, it was the dwarves. The dwarves listened to Skirnir's plea and accepted the challenge. But they knew that conventional materials, no matter how skillfully worked, would fail just as the iron chains had failed. They needed something that operated by different rules entirely. They needed to forge a binding from impossibility itself, and so they created Gleipnir, a name that means open or deceiver, and its construction required 6 ingredients that defied logic. First, the sound of a cat's footfall. Have you ever noticed how silently cats move? That's because the dwarves took that sound for Gleipnir. Second, the beard of a woman. This is why women have no beards. The dwarves gathered them all. Third, the roots of mountains. Mountains appear immovable, rooted deep, but those roots were harvested for the binding. Fourth, the sinews of bears. Fifth, the breath of fish. And sixth, the spittle of birds. Each of these ingredients was something that shouldn't exist, something that, by existing in Gleipnir, would cease to exist in the world. The dwarves wove them together with their ancient magic, and what they created appeared to be nothing more than a silken ribbon, smooth and soft to the touch, no thicker than a finger. Yet this ribbon, woven from impossibilities, could not be broken by any force in the 9 realms. When Skirnir returned with Gleipnir, the gods knew they had their solution, but they also knew that after breaking 2 chains, Fenrir would be suspicious of any third binding. They needed to be clever. They needed the wolf to agree willingly, and so they devised a plan as cunning as it was cruel. The gods invited Fenrir on an excursion to Lyngvi, a small island in Lake Amsvartnir. It was presented as a celebration, a continuation of their games of strength. The wolf had proven himself capable of breaking any chain. Now they had this curious ribbon they'd acquired, and wouldn't it be amusing to see what Fenrir could do with it? But Fenrir was no fool. As soon as he saw Gleipnir, so deceptively delicate, alarm bells rang in his mind. The gods were too eager, too insistent. He had broken massive iron chains without effort. Why were they so interested in seeing him deal with this fragile-looking ribbon? The wolf's eyes narrowed. This was a trap. This binding looks too thin to bring me any glory by breaking it, Fenrir said, his voice carrying an intelligence that made some of the gods uncomfortable. But if it has been made with magic and trickery, then thin as it appears, it shall not come upon my legs. The gods protested. They passed Gleipnir between themselves, pulling on it, showing how it wouldn't tear despite its delicate appearance. It's just a ribbon, they insisted. Surely the mighty Fenrir, who broke Leyding and Dromi, can snap this little thread. Or perhaps the wolf who terrifies us all is actually afraid of silk. Their taunts were calculated, designed to appeal to Fenrir's pride. But the wolf had learned caution. He made them an offer, one that put the gods in an impossible position. I will allow you to bind me with this ribbon, but only if one of you will place your hand in my mouth as a pledge of good faith. If I cannot break free and you refuse to release me, I will at least have one god's hand as compensation. Silence fell over the assembly. Every god there understood what Fenrir was proposing. In Norse culture, oaths were sacred, and the price of breaking an oath was dishonor worse than death. If they put a hand in Fenrir's mouth and then refused to free him, they would be oath breakers. The wolf's demand was brilliant. It forced them to either reveal their treachery or back down from their plan entirely. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, Tyr stepped forward. Imagine what that moment cost Tyr. He, alone among the gods, had shown Fenrir kindness. He had fed the wolf, spoken with him, perhaps even grown to care for him despite knowing the prophecy. Now, he was being asked to be the instrument of that prophecy's prevention, to betray the one creature in all of Asgard who had trusted him completely. But Tyr was also the god of law and duty. He had sworn oaths to protect Asgard and all its inhabitants. The prophecies said that if Fenrir remained free, he would kill Odin and help bring about Ragnarok, the destruction of everything. Tyr was being forced to choose between personal honor and cosmic duty, between one life and all lives. He made his choice. Tyr walked forward and extended his right hand, his sword hand, the hand he used to seal oaths, and placed it into Fenrir's jaws. The wolf and the god locked eyes. In that moment, Fenrir must have seen the decision in Tyr's face, the grim acceptance of what was about to happen. But the wolf had demanded this pledge, and Tyr had given it. Fenrir allowed the gods to wrap Gleipnir around him. The moment the ribbon touched his fur, Fenrir knew the truth. He thrashed, trying to break free as he had broken the iron chains. But Gleipnir held. He strained harder, and the ribbon only grew tighter. The more he struggled, the more unbreakable it became, because Gleipnir operated by rules that transcended physical strength. You cannot break the sound of a cat's footfall. You cannot snap the beard of a woman. You cannot shatter the roots of mountains that no longer exist. The gods began to laugh, all except Tyr, because Fenrir, realizing that he had been betrayed, that the gods would not honor their pledge to free him, did the only thing he could do. He bit down. Tyr's scream echoed across the lake as Fenrir's jaws closed, severing his hand at the wrist. The god stumbled back, blood pouring from the stump, while the wolf swallowed the hand of the one who had been his only friend. Some texts say it was Tyr's right hand. Others say his left. What matters is what was lost. Tyr's ability to hold a sword, his capacity to seal oaths with his primary hand, and most importantly, his honor. He had given a pledge and broken it, sacrificing his integrity to save the world. The gods bound Gleipnir to a massive boulder called Gjoll and drove it deep into the earth. But Fenrir continued to struggle, his jaws snapping at any god who came near. To keep him from biting, they took a sword and placed it in his mouth, the hilt against his lower jaw, the point against his upper palate. Fenrir couldn't close his mouth. His rage and pain flowed out as foam and saliva, forming a river called Van, which means expectation. The river flowed from Fenrir's jaws as the wolf remained trapped in eternal rage. But Fenrir's legacy did not end with his binding. Before his imprisonment, the wolf had sired 2 sons with an unnamed giantess who dwelt in Ironwood. Their names were Skoll and Hati, and they inherited their father's ferocity and his hatred of the gods. Skoll, whose name means treachery or mockery, was set on an eternal chase across the heavens, pursuing Sol, the goddess who drives the sun's chariot across the sky. Each day, Skoll runs behind the sun, his jaws snapping at the golden wheels, never quite catching his prey but never falling behind. When he draws closest, when his shadow briefly touches the sun, mortals see what they call an eclipse, and they know that Skoll is gaining ground. Hati Hrodvitnisson, he who hates, son of the famous wolf, chases Mani, the god who drives the moon's chariot through the night. Like his brother, Hati never rests, never tires, running through an infinite expanse of stars with singular purpose: to catch and devour the moon. Ancient peoples could look up and see the wolves' chase playing out above them, the sun and moon fleeing across the heavens, pursued by creatures they could never fully escape. The Norse explained eclipses through this mythology. When the sun or moon darkened, it meant Skoll or Hati had caught up, had gotten their jaws around their prey for just a moment before it slipped free again. People would make as much noise as possible, beating drums, shouting, clanging metal, to frighten the wolves away and save the celestial bodies from being devoured. But noise would not save the sun and moon forever. The prophecies were clear. At Ragnarok, when all bonds break and all debts come due, Skoll and Hati would finally catch their prey. They would devour the sun and moon, plunging the world into darkness and cold. And as they did, as the stars themselves fell from the sky and eternal winter gripped the earth, another binding would break. Gleipnir, which had held for ages, would finally snap. Fenrir would be free. Here's where the story of Fenrir becomes most fascinating, most relevant to our own world. Because we have to ask, who is the monster in this tale? Is it Fenrir, who only became the threat the gods feared because they treated him as one? Or is it the gods themselves, who allowed their fear of the future to dictate their present actions? Consider this: the prophecies said Fenrir would kill Odin at Ragnarok, but they never said why. They never explained what would drive the wolf to that act. By binding Fenrir, by betraying him through Tyr's mouth, by torturing him with a sword forced between his jaws, and leaving him to suffer in isolation for years uncounted, the gods created a motivation that might not have existed otherwise. Think about what Tyr and Fenrir had: the god who fed the wolf, who showed him kindness when all others showed fear. Imagine if that relationship had been allowed to develop. Could Tyr have civilized Fenrir? Could the wolf have become Asgard's guardian rather than its destroyer? We'll never know, because the gods' fear poisoned any possibility of that future. This is the paradox at the heart of self-fulfilling prophecies. If you treat someone like a monster because you fear they will become one, you remove any reason for them to prove you wrong. Fenrir had every opportunity to become the beast of the prophecy, because the gods gave him every reason to hate them. They took him from his mother. They kept him as a prisoner. They pretended to befriend him while plotting his imprisonment. And when he demanded the simple assurance of an oath before allowing himself to be bound, they gave it knowing they would break it. The gods of Asgard justified these actions by pointing to the greater good. Fenrir had to be bound to prevent Ragnarok. One wolf's freedom wasn't worth the destruction of all the 9 realms. But this logic has a cold edge to it. It says that it's acceptable to imprison someone not for crimes they've committed, but for crimes a prophecy says they will commit. It says that the needs of the many outweigh not just the needs of the few, but the rights of the few. And perhaps most damningly, it didn't even work, because Ragnarok came anyway. When that day finally comes, the signs are unmistakable. First comes Fimbulwinter, 3 years of endless winter with no summer. Brother turns on brother, father on son. Then the earthquakes begin, mountains crumble, and in his prison, Fenrir feels it. Gjoll loosens, Gleipnir begins to fray. In the sky above, Skoll and Hati catch their prey. Skoll's jaws close around the sun. Hati devours the moon, and Gleipnir snaps. Imagine Fenrir's freedom after ages of imprisonment. For years beyond counting, he has been bound, his jaws forced open, drool pooling and flowing to become a river, rage building with no outlet. Now, finally, he can close his mouth. He can move. The sword falls from his jaws. He stretches, and his body has grown in his imprisonment, grown to a size that makes mountains look small by comparison. Fenrir's howl shakes the worlds. It's a sound of pure rage and triumph, announcing to every being in the 9 realms that the wolf is free, that vengeance is coming, that all debts will be paid. His sons join him, and together they run, father and sons, 3 wolves who will not be bound again, racing toward the final battlefield. The armies gather on Vigrid, a plain that stretches 120 leagues in every direction. On one side, the gods and the Einherjar, the glorious dead brought from Valhalla to fight once more. On the other, the giants pour forth from Jotunheim, led by Loki himself. Freed from his own binding in the chaos, fire giant Surtur brings flames that will consume the world. The Midgard serpent, Jormungandr, rises from the ocean to join his siblings in the battle that was always coming. And Fenrir goes straight for Odin. Odin knows his fate. He has always known. When he sacrificed his eye at Mimir's well, when he hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 nights to gain wisdom, the price of that knowledge was understanding how he would die. Now, as Fenrir bounds across the battlefield, jaws wide enough to span from earth to sky, the All-Father faces his doom with the dignity befitting his station. They fight because they must. God and wolf, prophecy made flesh. Odin wields Gungnir, his spear that never misses, and it strikes true again and again. But Fenrir has become something beyond even godly weapons. He has become inevitability itself, fate given form and fangs. The wolf's jaws open wider, impossibly wide, his lower jaw scraping the earth, his upper jaw touching the clouds. And then Fenrir closes those jaws, and Odin is gone. The king of the gods, the wisest of the wise, is swallowed whole by the wolf he tried so desperately to bind. Some say Fenrir devoured him so completely that nothing remained. Others say you could still see Odin's form in Fenrir's throat, the All-Father fighting even as he died, making the wolf pay for every instant. The gods watching could only stare in horror. The prophecy they had spent ages trying to prevent had come to pass anyway. All their planning, all their trickery, the betrayal of Fenrir and the sacrifice of Tyr's hand, none of it had mattered. Odin died, exactly as the Norns had foretold. But prophecy is never quite finished. From among Odin's many sons came Vidar, called the Silent God, called the Avenger. He had been preparing for this moment since birth. His mother, the giantess Grid, had given him a shoe made from scraps of leather that humans had discarded over the centuries. Every time a cobbler cut away excess leather from a shoe, that piece found its way to Vidar. Over the ages, the shoe had grown thick, heavy, virtually indestructible. Vidar approached Fenrir while the wolf was still savoring his victory. The silent god said nothing. He never did. He simply stepped forward, placed his special shoe on Fenrir's lower jaw, and with strength inherited from his father, he stomped down. The shoe, crafted from 1,000 scraps, pinned Fenrir's jaw to the earth. Then, with his bare hands, Vidar grabbed Fenrir's upper jaw. The wolf struggled, but Vidar was the second strongest of all the Aesir, surpassed only by Thor, and Thor was busy dying from Jormungandr's poison. The silent god pulled, and Fenrir's jaws, the jaws that had devoured the All-Father himself, began to tear. The sound must have been terrible. Vidar ripped Fenrir's mouth apart, killing the wolf in the same moment that Ragnarok consumed everything else. The great serpent and Thor slew each other. Heimdall and Loki killed one another. Surtur's flames swept across the worlds, burning everything, and the 9 realms collapsed into the sea. From the ashes, a new world would emerge. The surviving gods would build anew. A new sun would rise, and the cycle would begin again. What does Fenrir's story teach us? That fear is perhaps the most dangerous force in creation. The gods feared what Fenrir might become, and in their fear, they ensured he became exactly that. Fear makes monsters of us all. That you cannot chain fate. The gods commanded the greatest magic in the 9 realms. Yet when Ragnarok came, those chains broke. Some forces are too fundamental to be constrained. That betrayal poisons everything it touches. Tyr's sacrifice became a symbol of terrible prices paid for the greater good. But broken oaths destroy trust utterly. And finally, that treating someone like a monster will make them one. The young wolf was neither good nor evil. He was potential. Every choice the gods made pushed him toward darkness. Would Fenrir have still killed Odin if the gods had treated him differently? We'll never know. That's the tragedy. Maybe the prophecy was inevitable. But maybe kindness could have changed fate in ways that chains never could. The image of Fenrir has endured through centuries for good reason. He represents our deepest anxieties about fate and free will. In him, we see our own struggles with the question, when do our attempts to prevent something actually cause it? The river Von still flows in our minds. That river formed from the suffering of a creature trapped by those who feared him. It asks us what we might be binding in our own lives, what prophecies we fulfill through our attempts to prevent them. If you enjoyed this exploration of Fenrir, the wolf whose destiny could not be chained, make sure to like this video and subscribe to History Scrolls TV. Ring that bell for notifications, because these tales are too important to miss.